Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain today. We are in the process of cleaning up our tunnel that we had our spring ranunculus in, and we're going to be harvesting some corms. So let's go and see how we do it. Okay, so the ranunculus, after we finished harvesting, which was right around probably at the middle of April, they were pretty much done from a cut flower standpoint. And what we did is we basically let the plants go dormant. We're now at the 1st of July and they've had a chance to go dormant and dry out. We haven't been watering the bed for quite some time. We've got 3 varieties in here, and our experience with, actually I think we got 4. Think about it. We got Amadine Pastel Mix, we have a White Picotee, a Champagne, and a Salmon. And then on the other side, you're right, we have another salmon, another variety of salmon over there on the other side too. So yeah, I guess so we got multiple varieties that we're going to be going through and harvesting. And one of the things though that we have noticed is some varieties are better at producing corms than others, and some years are better than others. And so we don't rely totally on 100% on our own harvested corms for continuing our ranunculus line, but what we do is we use these guys for either filling in the gaps in the fall. Say like maybe we decide we're going to be planting some more than we have maybe ordered, because ordering usually for these kinds of things ends up being in May for a fall planting, and so we can use that to fill in the gaps in the hoop houses itself. But the majority of these are going to be used for spring planting outside for next spring. So that's where we get that extra harvest of May into June, and that's what these guys are going to be going for. So some of the big things though that you have to be careful about on ranunculus harvesting is, number one, you want to make certain that you're not harvesting something that's under plant protection. Just as a matter of integrity, you know, whoever bred it and owns the rights to it spent an inordinate amount of time bringing that beautiful flower to market, and I think, you know, we should respect the ownership of that and not, you know, harvest those things or propagate those things in that way. But some of the other ones are older varieties, been around for a long time, not under plant protection anymore, and it's probably, I think it's perfectly acceptable to do that for your own personal use.
None of ours are under patent.
No, we don't. And actually, yeah, we kind of stayed away from that. But the other thing about it is we don't resell them. So we're not growing these. We're not like a grower who specifically is trying to raise corms and then resell those corms to other buyers. These are only for our own personal use. So our main focus is getting a cut flower out of these. So what you find is at least for us, our density of planting is pretty good to get enough tall cuts. And in some respects, I think that also impacts the size of the corms that the plants produce. So we tend to get on some varieties that they respond really well to being a good cut, but because they're so dense, they didn't really put in a lot of effort into making a corm. So sometimes we get hardly anything at all. These guys are really shallow in terms of, so you don't have to really dig very deep to get them out. And what we do is we're going to harvest and we'll pull them out. Like here's an example. This is an Amadine Pastel Mix. And sometimes you can just come up and just, you know, generally pull them out. Now, when you pull it out and you go, wow, there's still some dirt in there, but you can see the little cormlet, the eyes, or not eyes, but the little, I don't know what you call it, little rootlets or cormlets there. And in this case, what we can do is we can just break these remaining stems off and then take a look and see what's the overall size of the corm. Now, lots of times when people are talking about corm size, you know, you get these numbers like they say, oh, it's a 3.5 or it's a 5.7 or larger. And in some cases, like this one, doesn't look like it would be an easy one to break up. But when you really start looking at it, you can start seeing that there is actually another corm that actually can be broken off, and it's just a matter of kind of working it out. Now when you see something that's that size, that'll actually produce a plant. But it's probably less than a 3 in terms of 3 centimeter in size all the way around. So it's not going to be, you know, super big, huge plant, but it'll still perform in a plant. This guy here this is at your max size, and it's still got some dirt in it, and but basically you could, if you really wanted to work at it, maybe kind of bust it apart. But if it doesn't come apart easily, I tend to just leave them as one. So what I look at is I just kind of clean off any feeder roots that maybe are dried on the outside, shake off what excess dirt I can, and you could use it as storage at this point. I mean, just like this. Don't do anything more to it. Just kind of let it maybe dry for a day, and then put it into what we do is we put it into our root cellar, where it's at about 60 degrees, and there's enough. It's not super humid, but it's good, like for the same thing you'd store potatoes at, and it does pretty well. And again, we've only got to store these guys for about 6 months tops.
At this point, not even that long.
Yeah. Well, these are going to be planted for spring.
Oh, that's
so
right.
We will start them at the end of January.
Or some of these may be started in October, or
if need be, if we need to fill in, yeah.
Too. But that's when this group, this row, will be planted again, or one like it.
And then sometimes too, as you're harvesting through, you go, well, there isn't much stem here, so I pull this out and I take a look at it and go, well, there's still, you know, a fairly good amount of corm here. So when you just kind of look at it here, now this one, you can see there's 3 distinct plants here. When you look at it, you can kind of almost see where the little cormlet legs are interlocked, and that one should come apart pretty easy, and it does. See, it starts to come apart. I can get 3 corms out of this one. So that one gave me 3. Now the size of this is probably somewhere between, whoops, dropped it there. Like the size of that one is probably somewhere between a 3.5 and a 5.7. Probably closer, because when it dries, it's going to get a little smaller.
But when it's rehydrated,
it'll
pre-sprouted, it'll plump up.
Yep, it'll plump up. So, and then this guy right here, these 2, actually I think I got 4 out of this one. This one's definitely a small 3 centimeter type, about a 3 to 5 on that one, and a 5 to 7 on that one. So you can see the difference between a 5.7, which is this guy here, and this is a 3.5.
Our best guess.
Our best guess, roughly speaking. That's just from personal experience when we bought these things. And so, you know, sometimes you get extra. Dropped a couple here. Got to make sure I get those in. In some cases, though, I'll give you an example of one I pulled here. Like this, had absolutely no corm development. Okay, so you don't want that at all, so don't even bother with it. The other thing you want to be careful about too is if you pull out a corm and you see that it feels soft, or you know, it doesn't have a firmness to it. It should be firm at this point. Maybe a little still pliable because the corm isn't totally dried out because of the soil moisture. And you want to look and see if you see any rot on the inside or anything like that. If you do, what we do is we tend to discard it. That's not really rot, that's just dirt. So this one's actually fairly healthy. And so we'll just take off the excess stuff and store that. So you really want to be careful not to put away things that sometimes they have rot, and you look like you can say, oh, the corm looks okay, but when you really closely start looking at the little feet on the actual corm itself, what you see is that's a weed. What you can see is that maybe these guys turn a little black on the tip. Now, I don't have an example of that here, but if you see that, that's also an indicator they have rot. So when you go to rehydrate them, they're not going to be worth anything to you. It'll be a very poor plant. So you want to make sure that they're healthy. You know, if you smell anything, you shouldn't. It should only smell earthy. And so it's just a really easy matter of twisting off the excess stem, clean it up a little bit, check for any rot. Like this one's in good shape, and that's it.
This is aren't these some of the corms that we saved from last year?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're saving again.
This particular one for sure is last year. Because we didn't buy any Amidine pastel mix, so
they came out really good this year.
They but one of the things you got to be careful with a mix too sometimes is the more aggressive colors tend to perform and make the best corms. And so as you're sorting through and you go, oh, I'm not going to keep this corm because it's so small or it's some kind of substandard, what you may be doing in a mix is throwing away colors, and you're actually self-selecting. So as an example, what we have noticed is that the pink tends to make
the most corms.
A nice big corm, right? And whereas maybe a more pastel-y color is just a little bit smaller.
Pale yellow.
It's a pale yellow or something like that. So what happens is over time is you
end up with all pink.
Yeah, you don't realize that what you're doing is you're selecting and you're putting a bias into a mix of colors. So that's one thing that we have noticed that happens, and it's not that big of a deal to us in this particular case. And then the other specific colors we tend to keep segregated, so we know, like if we're picking a white picotee, it's a white picotee. And the last thing I may do sometimes, but usually at this time of year I don't need to because the soil wasn't moist. They're in really good shape. But you can wash them off before storage. You could wash them and then let them dry in the sun for an hour or two, until they're good and dry, and then you can move them to storage. But I tend to stay away from doing that because even your best efforts at getting them dried up, it's not worth the extra possibility of introducing moisture that you put into storage that something ends up starting rot that you didn't intend to do. And the other thing is I don't need to get the soil off of them because they're only going to be planted here. We're not selling them. So, I mean, people who sell them, they wash them. That's why they look so clean when you get them. But they have a whole process that they go through for drying them back out. So, in our case, it would just be air dry and probably cause more problems than it'd be worth.
It's been plenty dry here, so.
Yeah, we've been really dry here.
So I just leave them. They don't hurt anything with having dirt on them.
No. And they're really, they're a fairly easy thing to harvest, because they are so shallow. And you just kind of look at it and say, well, you can shake off any excess dirt. You can kind of tap it out a little bit. Like this one looks pretty healthy. And we'll let them, like I said, before we put them in storage, we'll let them dry for a day or two, like in the garage, where it's warm, but it's not, sun beating down on them. And,
could you leave them there and have them just start when in the fall? If you were to choose to, could you just leave them there, start the watering process in the fall, and have them come up?
Yeah, technically I think that'd work. But one of the things I noticed is because if you have some that maybe have issues that you don't want around that aren't that healthy, that you're trying to select in a sense for healthier and more vigorous plants. So what you can end up with is the ones that didn't perform so well last year could end up resprouting and performing even worse the next year. And so by harvesting them out, what I'm doing is I'm in a sense at the same time roguing out anything that doesn't look like it's going to be a vigorous plant.
Would you count on your harvesting your corms totally, or would you always ensure that you bought some in?
Well, I got to tell you, because of the vagaries of things, our experience in the past has been some years it's really good and you probably could get away with it. But on a consistent basis, no, I don't think so. Because, again, like on something like you're trying to get a pastel mix as an example, we'll probably buy and refresh this in a year or so because what we got is we're selecting for mostly pink. And,
Not
that's
by
not
choice.
by choice. So, and in some cases, for whatever reason, even though you put them in, they got damaged. Maybe a rodent came in and takes them out, or they just they didn't thrive because they had to fight off some insects for the year, or just things just happen. So no, I would look at this is for us. It's always going to be a supplemental. It's like 30-40% type thing.
So we buy new every year,
Yeah.
and this is our insurance.
Yeah, it's kind of like the new stuff is in a sense, I don't know, certified isn't the right word, but maybe it is. But it's just kind of like reinvigorating the gene pool, so to speak.
Great.
Because I think because just when you're raising them for cuts, you're planting them differently than I would think if you were raising them for seed or for corms. There's probably a spacing difference, and we pack them in pretty tight to get taller stems to get just to get the cuts out of it. So I think if I was raising these to be corms, it probably changes your focus a bit about how you culturally raise the plant. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing. So yeah, I think if you're doing this, you kind of look at it and saying, is it worth the effort? And you go, well, in this day and age, some of these guys, it adds up. Like to do a nice bed of this length, if you buy all new corms, depending on what you're buying. But let's just say you're buying mid-level stuff, good stuff, but not the fancy stuff. You're probably still paying, by the time you get it delivered, at least for us, 70-80 cents a corm. And then okay, fine. You put 1,000 in, and you go, well, that adds up. So you can see how fast it can go. I mean, you can harvest this stuff pretty fast.
Okay, we're no-till, so pulling that up isn't a real big disturbance of the soil.
They're so shallow. I mean,
because everything else we just cut off at the
it's like
root.
that deep, the tip of my finger. It's just.
But everything else we cut off at the root, at the soil level, and leave the roots there.
Right.
So,
Right.
But this isn't a big deal on this.
No. And then what we'll do is after we finish with this, the crop residue stuff, this stuff, I'll just go throw in the compost pile, and then we'll start treating it again with like JMS and put down like a 1/4 inch of compost. See, like I'm busting this one up into 3. And it comes apart real easy. And then our planting time for this bed again for ranunculus will be.
Are we putting the ranunculus there?
Yeah, I think so. Again, it shouldn't be a problem. I don't think, because we had no diseases or anything like that. And
We just had deer.
yeah, deer. Found that deer really loved the flower buds.
Yeah,
They never bothered them before this year.
ever.
Ever.
But this year they just walked into our tunnel and ate the buds off of.
A lot of them. Yep.
It was bad.
Luckily, it was near the end of our harvest. I think it was a little last week.
Yeah, and we would have topped them anyway, so they would have put root production back into the roots. But
Yeah, topping is not an absolute requirement,
no, but they sure did a good job of doing it.
but yeah.
So our next, the next crop, we're just gonna take care of this bed for the rest of the summer, so it's ready to go in 1st of October.
Yeah, you know what we could do in here is just put some quick rotation. Like that green drop stuff looks like it moves pretty fast.
Okay, yeah.
That Panacetum sorghum or whatever you call it.
I don't know.
And it's kind of cool looking, and I think
Kind of better than to leave it totally bare.
like this is a weed. I don't need that.
So I
So,
can't
yeah.
think of anything else to ask you about it. We're just like gonna leave them in the crates in the root cellar until it's time to bring them out for pre-sort.
So like you see this clump, it's got a lot of plants in it. So like I can start and breaking it apart's easy. You just kind of work it apart.
Just look where the legs are.
Yeah, you just kind of look and say, okay, here's a top, here's a top. Okay, put fingers on the top, and then just start working it apart. And in some cases, you can get a little one like that out of it. And it's not that big of a deal. And sometimes, with the field stuff, what I found is the little ones, they start out slow, but they catch up.
Yeah.
See, like this, I got probably 6 out of that clump.
Bonus.
Yeah, pretty good, and they're probably all pink.
I'm sure they are.
So anyway, folks, just wanted to show you, how we're going to do it, and start getting a crate full of them. And it's an easy thing to do, save you some money. You can knock maybe 30-40% off your bulb bill, and if you're doing it, the only downside to it is when you're cropping out, you have to leave it for a while so it finishes off. So you do miss that, if you're really intense and you go, oh, I missed, getting a rotation of something quick in there. Like,
we've kind of just dedicated this whole tunnel to kind of oriented to spring because we've got delphiniums that are perennial in here now.
Yeah.
And the snapdragons that
they're done, and
they're
we're going to crop
done.
those out this week too.
And there's just, it's kind of maybe just turns out that this turned into our permanent spring tunnel, and we would use all the other tunnels for more rotations.
Yep. But if you are, if space is a premium, it may not be worth your time to do.
Right.
You may actually make more money growing something else there. And that's something you just have to weigh. You say, does it fit with what I'm doing? Is it worth the time for me to do it? And I think if you could spare an hour or two, to just do it, and it's not that big of a deal for a bed to sit for a month, 6 weeks or so for these guys to dry out, I think it pays for itself. But it's all context driven, so it depends on what you guys got to do. So anyway, just wanted to kind of give you a lay of the land on this one, and hope you guys are all staying safe out there. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Time to get to work.